And welcome to the second annual Fuelies, brought to you by Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. We're going to put a capstone on 2018 for you guys. Hope you guys are excited.
I am stoked. This is the most exciting time of the year, the most anticipated award show of the year. It's better than the Emmys, better than the Grammys, the VMAs, the CMAs, the AMAs, I'm out of acronyms to throw out there, but it's a great night. It's better. Well, I don't want to say better than the footies. It's a completely ripped off idea, but we enjoy it, so we're doing it.
We definitely do. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. I'd be surprised if anyone's joining us for the first time here at our awards episode, but if you are, welcome. Hope you enjoy the show. We're going to recap some guys that we're some things that we saw this year. Some of our MVPs at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Give you the guys who helped you win your championship in the playoffs. Overall MVP. Give you the biggest disappointments of the year as well. Help you get you guys all taken care of. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that.
Does what the Bears just did to the Vikings count as the biggest disappointment?
I mean, it's
sure.
I don't know how big it was. It was a letdown, but it was almost like, you know what? They didn't earn it.
Y'all need an offensive line.
We need at least two
and a better OC.
Yeah,
that too.
Well, we switched it mid-season. Doesn't help.
Riley Reef getting run around by second and third stringers is absurd.
Yeah, and how much fucking money did we pay him again?
Too much. Whatever it was too much.
Thanks, Iowa.
Because that's the one thing that stuck out about the Vikings offensive line to me all year is he looks like a damn turnstile.
Yeah, he is. It's been bad. Oh well, at least the Ravens won.
Anyway,
so some good news though. Pat McAfee called an awesome game. Lions Packers earlier today.
Did you get to listen to it?
I did.
He is great. The fact that a fake field goal happened while Pat McAfee was calling a game is just a gift from the gods.
That went for a touchdown.
Yep.
I listened to that play call at work, and I was like, you know what? Yes, we need more of this.
So yeah, that was the highlight of my day. That and the Steelers not making the playoffs, but that's just a personal thing.
That's always a good
thing. Highlight of a lot of people's days.
All right. For the Fuelies episode today, we got a beer to preview for you guys. We're going to go ahead and go through all the news that's dropped in the last week since we've been on the air. We've been off the air for a full fucking week. That's crazy.
It's the first time we've been off the air for a full fucking week since the last March, maybe? I think.
Something way back. It's been a while.
And
then we're going to go ahead and go through the Fuelies, give our awards. I believe we're giving out 10 this year.
Yeah, I think you had 8, and then I added the 2 at the end that I felt like were not covered. So.
And whoever we give the award to, tweet at BeerfieldFF, and we'll with your information, we'll get you your trophy.
Right, if you happen to listen to this, we will buy a trophy just to send it to you.
I forgot to do a rookie award. We can do that one off the cuff.
That one's pretty easy.
That's too easy, I think.
But we still got to do one.
All right, but it's Beerfield FF for Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped. Beerfield Fantasy Football is where you can find us. If you want to watch the live show on YouTube, we actually did do a live show for this episode, even though we said we weren't. Otherwise, the video is just posted there if that's your preferred format of getting it.
America, because it wasn't going to be a live show, and then I got lost in Minecraft and completely stopped paying attention to my phone on Thursday night.
All right. If you guys want to help out the show additionally as well, you can do things by liking and commenting on YouTube, giving us a review on iTunes. All that helps boost visibility. Or if you want to help us out monetarily, we've got a Patreon, we've got merchandise, we accept beer donations. Hit us up at BeerfieldFF or BeerfieldFantasy at gmail.com, and we'll get you the information you need to get all of that taken care of. Let's go ahead and get into a beer preview, though. Beer Fuel. Actually, I think we forgot to. We haven't introduced ourselves in case somebody is a new listener. I'm at Nick Sparts. Dressed to the nines in St. Louis is Christopher Hopper.
At Hot BFF with 2 Ps.
He's the only one taking this award show seriously, and they got Dan 30 to my right.
At 3 BFF, I'm doing it. I'm doing it right for myself.
for yourself.
For myself.
By Dan's standards. He does it for him.
That's right.
All right, on today's episode, we've got Star Chicken Shotgun by Greenbush Brewing Company. It's their first time on this show. They're based out of Sawyer, Michigan, which I believe is just outside of Detroit, if I remember correctly. It's a 6.8% IPA. It's inspired by drug-fueled road trips to Vegas.
Yep.
It's got Elvis on the can art, so I just made some shit up.
Yeah.
I don't have that beer, or maybe I do, and it's just lost someplace. But I have had it before. I remember it because the flavor did not stick out well enough for me to remember it, but the name did. And the name's the entire reason I picked it up.
Yeah, the name and the can art are the main reasons I grabbed this
Yep.
beer.
Oh God.
Same.
T.Y. Hilton's limping off the field.
That's early.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
People can tell when we're recording.
I've got Spiteful Brewing's goddamn Pigeon Porter, but the coconut variant. They released
So
they have multiple variants of this. The regular one is a very solid porter. They have a maple one that I also have in the fridge, and they released a 4-pack earlier this year that had 4 different flavors. This is from that 4-pack, and it is the coconut variant. I have not had this.
I've heard they're all very, very good.
Yeah, this is the first. No, this is the second one out of the 4-pack I'm drinking.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to some news. Starting off with the Bucks firing Coach Dirk Cutter. They did not wait for Black Monday. They got it done ahead of time.
Thank you.
Yep, this needed to happen. So glad it finally did.
Yep.
Put everything out of their misery. Granted, the offense did rebound some this year, but just didn't perform at all under his tenure. And I think that they should have, with that offense, they should have performed even better than the 5-11 they ended up.
Yeah, defense never really performed that great. They had a brief stretch this year where they finally did something, but even still, it was just okay as opposed to being historically bad. And then the rest of and then the offense, while good, was inconsistent.
And it wasn't really Cutter; it was the OC. And like they tried, like he took over play calling for a couple weeks when their offense sputtered.
He is the former OC. He was the OC under Lovie Smith.
Well, he wasn't calling it this year though.
Yeah, the whole system is whack. The rumor is that Winston will be back next year, which I think makes sense. He should be.
He played well.
They're not going to find a better quarterback
Not
in
this
free
year.
agency. And every team out there is licking their chops and hoping that they don't keep him, who needs a quarterback. Like if Jacksonville or a team like that could get their hands on Winston.
Giants,
yep. Mm-hmm. So there's teams who are hoping that they cut him, but most likely they'll keep him.
Yeah, you're not going to find anything, like you said, in free agency or from what I've heard the draft this year. We haven't watched yet, but
yeah,
this isn't the year to go find replacement quarterbacks.
Yeah, we haven't watched any tape yet, but the what I've been hearing has been lower your expectations on this year's quarterback class.
A good quarterback class.
Was it 2013 when it was?
That was when Cam was the only real.
No, that was 11.
13 was to Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker.
No, that was the same.
I thought that was the same.
That was Cam. I'm thinking of the Geno Smith class.
Oh,
I think that was
EJ Manuel,
Geno Smith class. I think that was 13, wasn't it?
Right. The one that produced absolutely nothing. I think you're right.
Yeah,
it was around that time frame.
Yeah.
Either way,
we're hoping it's better than that, but I'm not making any promises that it is.
Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker is still a bad comparison if the only thing you got out of there is Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was also the Andy Dalton and Kaepernick class too.
I don't think so.
That was the lockout season. Was the Dalton? They got Dalton and Green the same season. Either way, doesn't really matter.
Right. Regardless,
I'm interested in finding this for my own information, but we'll proceed on to the episode here.
Notwithstanding, not great.
NFL.com's Ian Rappaport reports Philip Lindsay's wrist has a possible scaphoid fracture. I think that's how you pronounce that. Along with ligament damage. It faces a lengthy recovery. He will undergo surgery. This may limit his ability to be available for spring practice and may push him out into early training camp for his recovery window.
Yeah, definitely. There's a handful of injuries I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in the season to keep an eye on throughout the offseason for guys that may not be ready to go at the beginning of the year. Not sure what the timetable on this recovery is, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to be close.
Yeah, I think probably optimally he's like if things go great, he's probably ready in like May or June.
Are you looking to go out there and buy him in the offseason if you're a dynasty?
Depends on how. Here's the thing: his owner picked him up off waivers and struck gold effectively.
Yep.
So the question is going to be: is his owner going to be willing to part with him for a reasonable price? Oftentimes, when you hit gold like that, owners get biased and won't sell him.
I agree.
And a reasonable price for him to me is I'm not making a trade where Philip Lindsay is the centerpiece, and I'm probably still not willing to give up more than probably a second for him draft pick wise either.
Yeah, at most I'm given is a real
This is
like
a
a
weak-
11th or 12th pick.
This isn't as strong of a running back class as what we've seen the last 2 years, which could incline people to maybe make.
It's a very strong
move.
wide receiver class though too, so it
it
just
is.
depends on what you need.
Yep, exactly. And
Yep.
that's where I was leaning more towards this.
And in a lot of situations, I may prefer drafting the wide receiver in this class and then maybe try to package something together that's not draft picks and go and get them. Or maybe I flip 2 seconds or something like that.
To put it in perspective, Dan, in your league, I have a ton of wide receiver depth, and I need a more solid running back too, or at least more week-to-week options at running back too. It's a league where I may be looking to trade my second-round pick for, somebody
Something.
of that caliber.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, his recovery may be slow, so definitely keep an eye on that. This was a bit of a surprise to me, but the Chiefs signed running back Damian Williams to a 2-year extension through 2020.
I mean, when you look back in Miami, before he got hurt, he performed. Even with Drake, he wasn't otherworldly, but
He wasn't nearly this efficient.
no. But he goes to a team like the Chiefs, who is going to be
You didn't
hopefully
nearly have
dominant.
this opportunity either.
No, and he got gifted this with Spencer Ware. I don't know what Ware's contract situation is like after this season.
He's a free agent.
Is he free? Okay, so and the Chiefs could do what they did to Ware and draft another running back in the top 3 rounds. So for dynasty purposes, those who picked up or kept Damian Williams also struck gold.
So, do you hold him? Do you sell him?
Yes, you have to, because without Spencer Ware coming back, with Kareem Hunt gone, the Chiefs running back spot is a wide open gig, basically.
And on an offense that is that we've seen with Ware and Williams, and even with both the Williams, both running backs have performed once Ware was gone or once Hunt was gone. This is an offense you may want to get a piece of for the
He's
future.
absolutely what I would flag as a situational hold.
Yeah.
You hold him until you know more.
All right. Jets signed wide receiver Quincy Enunwa to a 4-year, $36 million contract extension.
I don't know why.
Why? Yeah.
Here's my take on it. It's only $20 million guaranteed, so after about 2 years, they can get out without too much difficulty.
Okay.
He's flashed when he's been healthy, and he plays out of the slot, which is a situation you're generally not wanting to throw draft picks at. And the slot class was this last class. This current one is looking like more of an outside receiver class.
Outside.
It's both.
Mhm.
There's some bigger guys that could, like a guy like AJ Brown who played
Yep.
slot. But
I think they probably try to go get a true one in this
No,
draft class.
I agree with you there.
And
Yeah.
then he can play the 2 or 3.
Yeah, I get it. I don't get it, though, at the same time. It's a guy that's been hurt that he has produced when he's been healthy some. He had one really good season and hasn't been healthy since then, though. So,
I mean, he was still solid this year, though. He gave you about 500 yards, only playing about half the games. Only 1 touchdown. He's not much of a red zone threat.
which is weird because
Yes.
that's, I believe, exactly what he was before he got hurt.
Well, I think he was the only guy when he had that 1
Right.
year.
He'll be
I don't know.
27.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Quincy Enunwa was not a guy I want to own.
Yeah, I mean he'll be 27 next year. The Jets have at least a couple more years until they're in it. It's more of a bridge, type of thing. As
So-
you said, Nick, he could be gone in 2 years.
So if you have him, you're trying to start him or trying to sell him.
Yeah,
If you
for
can,
what?
but I don't know
Yeah.
that you can. You have to find somebody that's a Quincy Enunwa believer, and how many of those are out there? You have him, you're stuck with him for now.
Or he's just a guy you throw in to a trade.
Assuming anybody wants that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Next piece of news is Demaryius Thomas is on injured reserve. He tore his Achilles late in the game in Week 16.
He tore it. Oh, he's what, 31?
30, bigger. It's a tough injury to come back from.
Man, if it's not a career, don't expect anything next year.
Yeah.
With it being this late in the season. We talked about this a lot with Deonta Foreman, too. With it being this late in the year, you're looking this time next year before you even consider stepping back out into the field if you're Demaryius Thomas.
So we're almost looking at he could be 33
Partial
years
tear or
old.
complete rupture?
I believe it was a complete tear is what I read.
Okay, then yeah.
He could be nearly 33 years old by the time he's ready to play again. And at that point, yeah. I don't know
But
if you cut him.
You
You
can't
let
sell
him.
him.
No.
So
You let him
You
ride
can-
your IR until you
You're
need to get
stuck
rid
with
of
him.
it. Yeah. Or maybe you try to sell him for a 3rd or 4th round pick.
Yeah, and he's almost certainly going to be cut. They're not going to try to bring him back unless he's willing to take a massive pay cut and a
Yeah.
kind of prove it type deal. He won't be on the Texans next year.
Yeah.
He's going the way of the Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
Yep.
That seems to happen with a lot of bigger receivers in the Demaryius Thomas type mold. Is when they drop, it's
Hard
real
fast.
quick.
Yep.
Tight ends Saints tight end Ben Watson plans to retire following the team's playoff run.
Not surprised.
About time.
He can finally stop putting
Taking
out
out
hits
knees.
on all of his.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to all the players declaring, and we actually have a few guys who are returning.
Breaking news. Jets now released Todd Bowles.
Second down. So that's 3
A lot
for
of
the
people
year.
thought this would happen tomorrow, Black Monday, but they decided to do it tonight.
Todd Bowles, for his tenure with the Jets, I don't know how much of a chance he was really given.
Yeah, these were some really, really bad teams.
The rosters that were put out there. In my opinion, Todd Bowles managed to overperform given what he had at his disposal.
Yep.
So I'm interested to see. He's a defensive guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Especially that defense. I'm interested to see where he catches on and in what role, be it as a coordinator, if he gets another head coaching spot, which usually does not happen immediately in this situation. For somebody that's not horribly tremendously established. So,
Well, a team that is expected to move on from their coach that could be an interesting spot would be Arizona.
yep.
Because he was the DC there under Arians.
Yeah. Arizona would be a very, very interesting landing spot for him.
You also have Denver.
Unfortunately, I think it would be more of the same for the next couple of years, though.
Yeah, but he'd probably have a longer leash, and his defense would fit the personnel they currently have on staff better than what Wilkes was trying to do.
It's true. It's interesting, but
So at least the defense should get better if they make that move.
You got Denver
and
too.
I do think he overperformed. I think,
Yeah.
and that's a testament to him. I think he did more with those teams than those teams should have been able to do.
Especially last year, I think, was his biggest overachievement. Though people were calling for that team to go 0-16, and they won 5 games. They struggled, and you could see that they were overmatched in a lot of situations. But and some of that is on the coaching. Like there were situations where I thought he could have been able to pull out a win that he couldn't make it happen. But on the flip side, his teams were just terrible talent-wise.
Yep, agreed.
All right, a couple players declaring here. Alexander Mattinson, running back, Boise State. 4th time in 5 years that they have a running back coming out early from Boise.
Nope.
This one apparently has a
Nope.
better brain than
Nope.
the last one.
I've
learned my mistakes.
Better
yeah,
brain than the last one. Does he have better knees than the other really well-known one?
Yep.
yes, he does. Apparently, he has better knees too. He's not as they said he's not nearly as good as an athlete as McNichols or Ajay was, but he doesn't have the health or brain concerns.
Brain concern.
He graduated from Boise State with honors. He had a 4.0 GPA in high school.
Okay, so
He's bright.
So he's smart.
he's smart.
Okay,
Good for
we'll see
him.
what the tape looks like.
Yep.
I'm at least intrigued by Boise State running backs most of the time.
Yeah, and they've been kind of messy. Darwin Thompson, running back, Utah State. Don't know a lot about him.
Watch the film. Let you know.
Yeah. We'll let you know in March.
This is one I'm excited for just for the name. John Ursua,
Your
wide receiver, Hawaii.
Okay.
Greg Dortch, wide receiver, Wake Forest.
Dortch.
Was that how you pronounce it?
Dortch. He should. I don't care I don't care if it's wrong or right.
It's Dortch.
It's
all
Dortch no matter
consonants.
what. That's right.
It's not all correct. O's a vowel.
I meant the end where you hit the Dortch
Oh.
part.
Gotcha. Hey, Dan, you want to go out on the Dorch and have a beer?
You're so right.
All right.
Okay,
Up next
we
is
gotta-
Kahale Waring, tight end, San Diego State. I've heard some nice things about him. I'm looking forward to his tape.
Sean
I was
Titan
gonna
class.
say we got to move on before Nick starts warring with us.
Well, how about you go out to the creek because we're going to talk about Dawson Knox next.
Oh my god. The whitest name.
Wow.
Tight end, Ole Miss.
So, okay.
All right. A couple players returning, the big one being Justin Herbert, quarterback, Oregon. He was actually projected to be the number 1 QB in this class if he came out.
2020
Yeah.
is looking really good for quarterbacks too.
Yeah, this class just got thinner.
Yep. Every team, it's going to be a tank fest in 20 if teams are not looking like they're going to be in the playoff hunt.
Great. It's me another year of Giants people on Twitter complaining that they should have taken Saquon at number 2 for an entire fucking year.
All right, and the other one is Shea Patterson, quarterback, Michigan. He just massively underperformed, and he's going to try to give it one more year to increase his stock.
Good luck.
And that's all I
Probably
got.
smart. I mean, at least he realized that and stayed in school, which is more than I can say for some people the last 2 years.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we
you.
That's all we got. Let's go ahead and go on to the Fuelies, and after some last-minute scrambling on my end to actually get it on the board here, we got a new drop for you.
Beer-fueled Fuelies.
I like it.
All right, and we're doing this Heisman style. So we each had a category that we were voting for. We got a first place vote, a second place vote, and a third place vote. And like the Heisman, 3 points for first, 2 points for second, 1 point for third. Highest score overall between the three of us wins. Things to consider when doing this: overall finish on the season, their consistency week to week, where they were drafted, so how much of a value they were to your roster, and last playoff performance. So when it came down to crunch time, did they show up for you?
Yep. If you're going to read them all, you should go reverse order just to build the anticipation.
We can definitely do that. Going to quarterback MVP as our first category here. Coming in fourth with 2 points. He got 2 third-place votes from Nick and Hopper, was Matt Ryan.
He referred to himself in the third person.
It works.
Yeah. Matt Ryan did a lot better and had a little bit of a bounce back this year from last year. It still wasn't as great as his MVP season, but
it was
close.
though.
It was close. He had a very, very good year. It didn't get talked about a whole lot. So if you did draft him, he was a value.
Yeah, I had him on my overdraft list multiple times. I was firmly on the Matt Ryan hate wagon all preseason. He bombed week 1, and then he basically was great for the entire rest of the year. So congratulations, Matt Ryan. You did great.
Yeah, thank God that defense really fucking took a beating.
And
injuries-wise, kind of gave him a chance to stand it more.
Just a second 30-plus touchdown season. So
and as for as much as we hated on Sarkisian last year, the offense was way better this year.
Yeah, not the issue.
Yeah, and that's including multiple running back injuries, lots of offensive line injuries, and
that's probably why he didn't need to get cute with trying to play Freeman and Coleman equal snaps and touches.
Well, he still had Ito in there trying to do the equal snap thing. It didn't matter.
Yeah, I don't really know what it was last year, but this year, he figured something out.
Finished third, had the number 1 finish in week 15, I believe. Gave you solid finishes in 14 and 16 as well. So just a great overall showing for Matt Ryan.
Yep.
Coming in third is Ben Roethlisberger. I gave him a second place vote. Dan gave him a third place vote.
He was incredible this year. He was QB2 in the season, finished with 21.8 points per game. Those are in your standard 4-point touchdown formats. You didn't get nearly as much road bend this year. He showed up in a few of the matches. I think he was a top 3 QB during the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he went off in week 16.
Yeah. Well, that whole offense did. So he came out there and he did what he normally does.
Yep. 6 of his 8 road games were 20-plus fantasy points this season. Road bend did not happen.
And again, thanks to a defense that really struggled and a running game losing Bell. I mean, obviously Connor was able to do what he did, and we'll get more to him later, but he had to do more, and he paid off the owners for it.
Yeah, Ben had to do more, and he had a true high-end wide receiver, too, with Juju to complement Brown, and it paid off.
Use the tight ends more than he had in previous years.
Two good receiving tight ends helps.
Yeah.
And Connor was not a bad receiver either.
No.
Nope.
Other thing I was going to say, too, is the 11th quarterback off the board. So you could have, in a 12-man league, drafting one quarterback, you could have waited till one of the last guys to take a quarterback.
We always say,
and you would have been great.
Wait on quarterback, and you get paid off, too, for the next guy.
All right. And then we're going to the second spot. Getting 2 second-place votes from Dan and Hopper is Andrew Luck.
No one believed that he was going to come back from the shoulder injury as well as he did. It was a little rough in week 1, but as a result, he did very well. He finished his QB6 this year. He was drafted in the 9th round with his ADP. And he went on an absolute tear midseason. If you want to talk consistency, they're going for 8 games straight with 3 or more touchdowns. He only gave you 3 dead games this season. So, unfortunately, he kind of dropped off a little bit on the back end, but the value you got out of him, and he probably at least carried you to a playoff champ.
Playoffs. And as Hopper just mentioned, during weeks 4 through 12, like obviously not during the big critical times, but down the stretch, 3 plus touchdowns their entire time. He was a QB2 during that stretch. He averaged 24.4 points per game. When you can set and leave your quarterback knowing that he's going to get 3 touchdowns or more, you're going to feel pretty good.
And he did it against the Jaguars, did it against some other tough competition.
Yeah, he was a guy that it just didn't matter where he played. And again, it was, thanks to but he's fantastic. And he showed up in week 16, obviously done it in week 15 for you. But
yeah, he took an extended preseason, his playoff run was okay. Wasn't amazing.
No, not at all.
That's why I left him off my board. It was the playoff run mostly because Ryan, Roethlisberger, and Mahomes all had better playoff runs.
It was those top 4. The guys, we'll get to Mahomes, obviously, sorry for the...
big surprise.
Big surprise there. Spoiler alert. But no, all 4 quarterbacks are deserving to be talked about.
Yep, I'm pretty sure people would have rioted if Mahomes did not clean sweep the first place votes.
No.
Far and away, he was the quarterback 16 off the board. We hinted that there might be something here. Hopper's and mine projections both were like, hey, we might be undervaluing him. And we both bumped him up, but man, we should have bumped him up way more. He finished as the 20 plus points in 13 of 15 games, finishes with the 12th best fantasy season ever in 4-point passing touchdowns. And not just quarterback, period.
Yeah,
4th best ever.
I bumped him down off of my initial projections, and my initial projections were way more close to right than what I ended up at. I had his TDs about halved in my actual projections for what he ended up with, but he was a guy that a lot of people thought was going to be good, but he was being drafted a little bit later. And like I said, Nick, you and I, our projections both said, holy crap, this is too high. So we backed off of it a bit, and turns out those weren't wrong at all. Just one bad game all season and one mediocre one at the time of this writing, which was before the game he just played. 4,800 yards, 48 touchdowns. He went to over 50 for the year.
Yep, and over 5,000 yards. I mean, he basically joined, Peyton Manning to ever do it, to ever throw over 50 and over 5,000. It's only happened twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's only 3. He's one of 3 quarterbacks to throw for 50 plus. It's Brady, Peyton, and him.
Yep, and he's one of 2 who threw for over 5,000 and
it was
50
his
touchdowns.
first full season as a starter.
Yeah. And it's like you can't project that. Like you can't project that. You can project it and be like, "Holy shit, this is incredible. This could happen." But
you can't feel good about putting that projection out there. But that goes into one thing I learned this year. Now I'm just going to lean on whatever the numbers tell me.
Yep,
it sounds insane. I'll just back it up at this point. Because every time I backed off this year, I should have stuck with it.
Now, there's a few times where my projections ended up being way wrong. I'm looking at you, Kenny Stills, but if I'd bought into Mahomes,
it was the Dolphins too. No one still knows what the fuck they're doing.
Right.
All right, that's all we got for quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and jump over to our running back award. Starting over, we have a 3-way tie for 3rd place. We all could not decide who our number 3 guy was here. So getting a 2nd place vote from me was Alvin Kamara for 2 points. Getting 2 3rd place votes was Saquon Barkley from Dan and me. And then lastly, getting a 2nd place vote was Melvin Gordon. So all 3 ended up with 2 points. Let's start talking about the rookie in Saquon Barkley.
Well, Saquon had an amazing season. He went over 2,000 scrimmage yards. He was everything that you wanted him to be. The only reason I did not rank him is when we're considering ADP, he was a 5th overall pick. So you were putting a lot on Saquon performing without having seen it before. So while I think he lived up to that draft spot, the only reason I did not include him is because that's what was expected out of him.
I'm not sure we were quite expecting this much, but it was close.
Yeah, I mean, he's RB3 in the season, 21.2 points per game, and this is all in half-point leagues. Yeah, 14 total touchdowns was tied for 4th most. He's RB9 through the playoffs. I mean, he wasn't as his usual top
He gave-
dominant self.
He
but,
gave you one dud in week 15.
Yeah, and during that he was 17.2 points per game. It wasn't to the level of Derrick Henry, but you'll still
We'll get
take
to him
a
later.
You'll still take an RB9 during a playoff stretch. But as Hopper said, though, he did live up to what you drafted, as a 5th overall player off the board.
Yeah, he lived up to it. You just paid for it too.
Yep. Though I didn't realize he was 5. I thought him and Kamara were tied.
Fine.
They were within 2 points of each other, I think.
No, I meant in terms of draft position, but ADP.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, you were taking him right behind basically, the point is you were taking him behind Saquon, or it's not Saquon, Zeke, Gurley, Johnson, and
Bell.
And Bell. Right. And then you had the toss-up between him and Kamara. But either way, you're still taking him in that tier of running backs. You're putting a lot on an unproven rookie for him to perform at that level, and it ended up paying off. But ADP is just the only reason I faded him. He was great down the stretch with everything he did. You had some efficiency problems in some games with running the football, but he made up for it with his receiving when that happened. So,
All right. Let's go ahead and talk about the next person in this tie group. Hopper, you had Melvin Gordon with a second-place vote here.
yep. Late season injuries aside, which is really the only thing that derailed him, he was consistent. He trailed just Todd Gurley on a points per game basis. He's drafted as the running back 9, and he had his most efficient season as a runner by far, clocking over 5 yards a carry. It's his first season going over 4. His target volume actually increased on a per game basis, and he's once again going to have double-digit touchdowns. So for me, Gordon's a guy you took a little bit later than Saquon. That performed when he was healthy is essentially the RB2 on a points per game basis. So I felt like that deserved mention and reward, because even though he got hurt for 2 games during the playoffs, that isn't necessarily indicative of what his overall performance was for the season. And on a points per game basis, you were very, very happy with what you got, especially if you missed out on that top tier running backs, because he performed at that level.
All right. Kind of on a similar note, that's why Kamara was in my ranking, because he was also really consistent. But the reason I went Kamara as my second place vote as opposed to a guy like Gordon is not having him basically in the playoffs was just such a killer for so many teams that I couldn't put him into my top 3.
And there's just so many running backs to pick from. It's not like we're like, he doesn't deserve to be in this spot. I almost put a Gordon in over Barkley. I thought about Kamara. Obviously, we got other guys, to talk about that deserve to be talked about. Yeah. It's just when you don't have your top guy for the playoffs, that's where that kind of nudge, because it would have been Gordon all day.
It's not his
fault.
Especially for
obviously.
me, he's the reason I was even in playoff contention in the first place.
Exactly.
So.
He just like, with other guys, it's just.
And he was back for the championship game. He didn't miss the entire playoffs. That's the other thing. But you had to get there without him, which does hurt. But ADP, overall performance, consistency, the other 3 metrics, he checked those boxes with flying colors.
Exactly.
He definitely did. Let's quick talk about mine here, and then we'll move on to the second place vote getter, which Alvin Kamara was the third tied for third place. He's 4th in running back scoring, went in about the same spot as Barkley, but he only had 1 single-digit game all season. And then for me, the big thing was he had 3 solid games, week 14 to 16, including a 2-touchdown performance in week 16 for you. So if you got into the playoffs with Kamara, which a lot of teams did, he really helped you there. He performed exactly as you were hoping in those last 3 weeks.
He did. Kamara fell off a little bit when Ingram got back, but overall, he didn't really do anything to look. You weren't going to get the same efficiency you got from him last year. That was insane. He still did plenty to live up to the hype, to live up to where he was being drafted, and to show that if Ingram does depart, he's the guy and is a very, very highly coveted commodity.
All right, let's go ahead and get to our second place guy, which was Todd Gurley getting 3 points. Yes, we split the vote a lot on this one.
A lot of running backs deserve.
Dan, you had him as a second place vote, and Hopper had him as a third.
I love Gurley this year. He finished the season as RB1, 24.5 points per game. And this is obviously in half-point PPR leagues. And this is missing the championship week. Yes, this is very important to miss, but he got you there hopefully you knew what to do to earn that spot to get there. Scored a touchdown in his first, at least one touchdown in his first 10 weeks. And he finished with 21 on the season, which is the most in the league again. He lived up to a top 4 pick more than I think any of these guys, including Zeke. Did it all year long. If it wasn't for him getting nicked up, he'd be the top spot again.
Sorry.
Nicked up. Sure.
Yeah, he's the one guy in the top 4 that I think did live up to it. And aside from some good NFL plays, he was everything you'd hoped you were getting. Well, and the injury. And by good NFL plays, I mean when he went down in bounds or didn't go for the touchdown when they were running out the clock a couple times. I mean, that could have hurt, but out of the 101 to
I thought he ended up scoring
He
anyway.
ended up scoring then like 2 plays later, which was even better.
Yeah, on one of them. He did it twice, I think, went down.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there's almost no fall off from last season for him. And, once again, he is the running back 1. So it's just you drafted him top 4. So you kind of expected him to be the running back 1. You may have even drafted him as the running back 1. So you didn't really get any ADP value there. And he did miss the fantasy championships. But he was, again, exceptionally good. But that's why he was my third place getter, is because the ADP wasn't as much of a value as our number 1 guy or Melvin Gordon. And like Gordon, he did miss some key games.
He's also the first running back to ever finish as an RB1 in back-to-back seasons. Like, this has never happened before.
Ever?
Yeah. It gets talked about a lot during draft season, why people are like, well, I can't draft this guy because
I thought it just had been a while. I thought LT would have for sure done it twice in a row.
I'm surprised Bell hasn't also.
Yeah, Bell never did, I knew.
Yeah. I may be wrong, because I've been wrong plenty of times before, but I never seen that pop up a lot as some ridiculous reasons as why people would fade off of Gurley's, because we've never seen a team season with back-to-back RB1 finishes, or as the RB1 finish.
Yep.
All right. And then going on to our winner, also a clean sweep for the running back position, Christian McCaffrey.
Yep, something we finally were not split on here.
Yep.
I think I should probably take the lead on this
Okay.
one. I had some things to atone for. No one believed, myself included. I said he couldn't repeat his target volume, and in a way I was right. He didn't repeat it. He had 10 more going into not counting week 17 numbers, than he did in 2017. So he actually increased it. I said he couldn't do it between the tackles, and he did do that to 5 yards a carry. I said he couldn't be used on the goal line, and through about week 7, I was absolutely right about that. And then he put up 7 rush touchdowns amidst a stretch of 8 straight games with 100 or more scrimmage yards. So to me, he was everything we had hoped that David Johnson was going to be. You drafted him as the 11. He's likely, or at least as of the time of me writing these notes last Thursday, he was the running back 2. So there wasn't a game where he dudded you. He got the same target volume. He proved he could do it on the goal line. He was scoring touchdowns. And at the end, from mid-season on, he was just a lock to give you 100 scrimmage yards. Yeah,
and during that week 8, that game against the Ravens, since then, 26.3 points per game that he gave you 23.6 points per game during the playoffs, RB2 during that stretch. The guy he got the David Johnson role. He didn't obviously do what Gurley did last year towards the end of the year, but he proved to everybody that he can be a complete workhorse back. And the Panthers and their OC, I can't remember his name, didn't lie to us.
Norv Turner?
Norv Turner.
How can you forget Norv Turner?
Yeah, trust me, I want to always forget Norv Turner. But they didn't lie to us this time. And CMC, despite the CJ Anderson scares,
which from what we've seen in Anderson the last 2 weeks, he probably should have been a real threat.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened there.
I'm not either.
Good matchups and the teams that just didn't give a shit anymore, and the Cardinals and Niners.
True. All right. Anything else to add on running backs?
Nope.
No.
All right. Let's go on over to the wide receivers, where coming in 4th place is DeAndre Hopkins with 1 point. I was the only person to give him a 3rd place vote. I was a little surprised.
I was surprised Dan didn't.
Dan had him in there, and then I wanted to give Julio some love. And I just one of those things. He would have been honorable. He always gets 1 point from me just because of my love for him.
All right. He was the 2nd most consistent wide receiver on the season, which is why I gave him my 3rd place vote, just behind our 1st place vote getter. His worst performance was a 5 for 74 performance in Week 12, scored double digits in all but one game. And in Week 15, in your fantasy semifinals, 10, 170, and 2 to help get you to the championship.
He was the wide receiver 1 during the fantasy postseason, so that's what you want from one of your top draft picks. Lived up to his ADP.
Yeah, he and the number 2 guy were neck and neck for me.
Yeah.
All right. Dan, you gave Dan and Hopper, I should say, both gave third place votes to Julio Jones for a number 3 candidate.
Wide receiver 7 on the season, 16.3 points per game during that stretch. From week 9, when he started scoring touchdowns again, he was the wide receiver 3. Scored 4 touchdowns during the fantasy playoffs, 9 games of over 100 receiving yards. He was Julio that actually decided to give you touchdowns.
Yeah, once they got through the bye week, right, he just started scoring like crazy.
After the bye week, yeah.
Yep. When he couldn't score touchdowns to start the season, but he's got a second highest touchdown total since 2012. One game left to play that's already been played.
And he scored again.
Yeah, he scored again. So there you go. 8 on the season. He's over 1,500 yards yet again. He didn't miss a game, which usually he's a lock to miss 1 or 2. Well, the upside wasn't there all season, thanks to the no red zone looks at the beginning. He's one of the most reliable and consistent wide receivers this season, as he is most years. So you just throw the touchdowns on top of that down the stretch, and you got a very, very good season out of him that deserved mention.
All right. And then to the normal line of do you take Antonio Brown versus the field? The field won this year by 3 points.
Brown is just...
He was our
He's too fucking good.
Our number 2 overall wide receiver. Got 6 points from us. 3 second-place votes all around.
It's just another season. It was, top 2. He was the wide receiver 2 before he didn't play week 17, but
we don't count week 17, so works for us.
We don't count week 17. It doesn't matter. So it's reliable year in, year out. There's not anything I can say about Antonio Brown that hasn't already been said, or you can't read off any stats that people aren't already aware of. That's why he's consistently the top wide receiver taken every year.
Yep, and he was your wide receiver 1 during weeks 15 and 16, the biggest crunch time you need your guys to perform, and he was there.
Yep, and if it hadn't been for this Week 16 performance, he actually would not have been in my top 3. Julio would have been my 3rd, and Hopkins would have been my 2nd. And then in Week 16, he drops a 1,485 and 2 touchdown game against the Saints for 37.5 fantasy points.
Yep,
he straight up won people titles.
15 touchdowns on the year, 18.1 points per game is what you want to get. And
this was his slipping season where
he turned 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he barely missed his a back-to-back wide receiver 1 finish, so he'll still be a top 3 wide receiver taken next year.
As he should.
And the number 1, and another clean sweep for this one, and that's because he was Mr. Consistent in your number 1 overall wide receiver, Devontae Adams.
Shout out Nate Hamilton, first off.
Never going to let us forget that one.
Ours, he won't let us forget this, but he had him pegged as this, and we were high on him, me specifically. I think he was my 4.
Yes.
Yep. I think I was the lowest at 7.
No, you never right at 7.
So we believed it. We called it. We were right about it. He was great. He flourished on an otherwise meh Packers offense. He was the definition of set and forget. He didn't give you a dead game all season. His touchdown rate climbed even higher than what it had been previously, and his yardage total was a career best by 500 yards. He's a wide receiver 1. Going into week 17, he also did not play week 17, but we don't count that. And you likely did get a value for him on draft day because he was going behind some of the bigger names mentioned. But without Jordy Nelson there, without a true, reliable number 2 option, is Devontae Adams. And he's insulated. It doesn't matter who's starting or who's playing.
And speaking of that consistency, as you pointed out, scored a touchdown in all but 4 games this year.
Yep.
In the games he didn't score, or he finished with 80 yards or a touchdown in every single game this year. He had 8 wide receiver 1 finishes on the season, including all 3 of them during the fantasy playoffs. We thought this would happen because of there's no other options to throw to, but not to this degree.
No, he had 2 weeks below 15 fantasy points in half PPR. That's absurd.
Thank you for a bad defense too.
He needed to do something every week, and every week he did something.
No, it doesn't matter who he played against, and he played against some of the top corners, and he was still able to produce.
Yep. All right, that's it for wide receivers. Moving on to tight ends, where only 3 guys got votes, so this will be pretty quick. Coming in third place, Zach Ertz. He got a single second place votes and 2 third place votes. Dan gave him the second. So Dan, why don't you start telling us about Zach Ertz?
He led all tight ends in targets and receptions. He finished as a tight end 2 in the season, and this was right before week 17, so that may have changed. 14.6 points per game during the season. He had 12 tight end 1 weeks, which I believe is tied with Kelsey for the most. Started the season with 9 straight tight end 1 weeks. Yes, with the full taking over, he started to dip a little bit. You saw that during the playoffs, and he came out and helped win people championships in week 16. I debated between him and our next guy. They both deserve. It's more of a two-way 2B for me at this point. So
ADP was the tiebreaker for me,
and I completely agree with that. You know, if you want to obviously that route, and that's what I said. I almost went the same way too. Ertz was consistent, especially to start the year.
He also was pretty quiet in weeks 14 and 15 as well, which I knocked him for slightly.
Well, just like I just said, with the move to Foles hurt him. But again, he came back and was, I think, the tight end 1 in week 16.
He was.
So.
Yep. And the bottom line is you got a new big 3 for tight ends. It doesn't include Gronkowski.
Yep.
All right. And the number 2 vote getter, no surprise. He is your new record holder for most yards in a tight end season. George Kittle got 2 second place votes and a third place vote.
He went for, I think it was 139 today.
149 and 1.
Yes.
We got to give a slight shout out to Hopper, who was the highest on him last year coming out of the rookie class, who typed him up enough for me to want to give him even more of a look in my dynasty leagues. And thank you.
You're welcome.
So
I don't know that there's a better value in fantasy this year than George Kittle. You look for tight ends, and if you're going to invest a draft pick in one that's going to put up wide receiver 1 type numbers, it's usually not the 1207. But that's what Kittle's ADP was. It was a 1207, 13th tight end off the board. And he was a monster despite going through, 3 different quarterbacks and Jimmy Garoppolo, CJ Beathard, and Nick Mullins. He's a tight end 3 behind Kelsey and Ertz, and that's mostly because of touchdown numbers, which is more of a product of the offense than him as an individual.
Yep.
1,200 plus yards, now 1,300 plus yards. And he's been one of the very few set and forget tight ends. I think there are probably about 5 of them this year.
I don't even know if there was 5. It may have been just 3.
You had 5 tight ends go.
Cook and Ebron, I think, were the other 2 that I was including.
You had 5 tight ends who average 10 points or more in a half point. And yes, and those are Cook and Ebron. Kittle had 11 tight end 1 finishes this season.
Yep.
Now 12.
And how many of Kittle's touchdowns too were him just like taking it 80 yards to the house?
He was like Garrett Sellett out there, and those or not
Brent,
Brent, but also Vance
Brent back
McDonald
in the day.
before he got moved to Pittsburgh, who did the same thing in this offense. So
he was way better than.
I mean, we all liked him coming into this year. Again, you can't predict this type of a breakout, though. This was incredible.
All right, and then another clean sweep for the first place. We'll get some variety on this, we promise.
It's coming, we swear.
Travis Kelce, your number 1 overall tight end on the season. His only real blemish was that he had kind of quiet weeks 15 and 16 and a quiet week 1, I guess, but weeks 2 to 14, he was an absolute monster.
It's the Christian McCaffrey thing all over again. You think he couldn't do any better in certain areas, and he did even better. Career high in touchdowns, yards, targets, and receptions. He completely lived up to the draft position. He's your new tight end 1.
He's the guy that people are talking about as being where Gronk was drafted this year, just because of that consistency.
No, I think he goes higher.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he has the
or
concerns.
where Gronk, or fine, if you want to go that where Gronk was a few years ago when he was considered a
late first round, early second pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where Kelce goes next year.
He had 12 tight end 1 finishes. He had 5 weeks as the tight end 1. So, again, he has reached where Gronk was, and that he just dominates, that position where you draft him, you don't have to worry about. You have a top 2, top 3 worst tight end, guy at that spot.
Before we move on from tight end, I have a question for you guys that has to do with draft strategy.
Okay.
Do you start to value the Kelce's, Kittles, Ertzes of the world a bit higher now that tight end is kind of a mess? It's not that you can find a waiver wire replacement. There's actually parity with these guys. And do you start to maybe take them in a position during your draft where they would maybe fit in as like a wide receiver type of production level.
I'll know more next June or July once we start kind of seeing how the landscape points out to this, and also when we start seeing some of how free agency is. We get word maybe if OJ Howard is healthy, there may be enough attractive options that I'm willing to take a chance on that I don't necessarily make the reach. I definitely think that both Ertz, Kelsey, and Kittle will all be drafted higher than the top 3 tight ends were drafted this last year.
Yeah, like for me, I'll either reach for a top 3 guy or I'll wait until where you get a Kittle this year or in Njoku or in Howard. I'm not saying for what they perform from where you drafted them, but yes, I do see the intrigue of doing it because this is the worst it's been in a long time. Like I thought this was the worst tight end year we've seen outside of the top 3.
Well, and when you look at your second and third wide receivers, you're most of the time, from what I've been doing anyway, you're rotating those guys out. You're playing matchup. You're finding guys to stream more so than you are at tight end. So to me, it makes more sense to take one of these top 3 tight ends once maybe the first year receivers is gone than it does to jump down into that, third or fourth tier wide receiver.
It just comes to where you want to. Do you want to value depth at positions where you need to start 3? This is all based on your settings, where more leagues are becoming more flex for their spots. You're starting to see 2, 3, 4 flex positions, less of a single demand of 1 for 1 spot. Then yes, I would totally start to value that more because then you can start to get cute with it.
Because these are wide receiver 1 type numbers.
Yeah,
from all 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is with a lot of leagues now going tight end premium, that'd be the same idea.
That too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get to our waiver wire hero then. Starting off with the 2 guys who got just a single third place vote. Let's start off with Eric Ebron from Hopper. How much did that one hurt?
Not as much as Christian McCaffrey did. No, this is another guy, and I did this because of what I just talked about. The parity at the tight end position being so great that the idea that you found a set and forget waiver wire tight end was, most of the time you're going to be screaming one. But Eric Ebron was a set and forget waiver wire tight end. If you believe that he had value before the Doyle injury and he flourished with Doyle there, he really flourished after Doyle went out. And it's a position that's hard to find players to be confident in. And he's going to end up finishing as a tight end 4, just 14 points behind George Kittle and about 20 ahead of Jared Cook or so. It's probably more behind Kittle pending the outcome of this game, but you get it. He was a touchdown monster, and he's a guy that you snagged off of waivers. It was a set and forget tight end that also produced at wide receiver 2 levels. And you normally don't find that on the waiver wire. That's normally something you have to take in round 6 or 7 of your draft.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put him on this list so we can talk more just how bad it was, but how great it was also weight for tight ends this year.
Yeah, he was a guy I called early as a possible upside home run swing.
Yeah, you were high on him, and Hopper and I were like
all over him, and I was the anti of that.
Yeah, and I took him in a couple places. It worked out great for me. He saved me. He got me into the playoffs in Scott Fishbowl.
I took him just because you talked him up enough, and this is why I give you guys credit because I'll listen even when I'm lower on a guy. I'm like, you know what, fuck it. If he's right, I get to praise him, and then I get a guy that actually showed up.
Yeah, I definitely was not predicting 13 touchdowns though because he scored another one tonight.
Did he break? So he had the most tight end touchdowns this year. Did he break?
Yes.
Did he beat out Kelsey?
Yeah, I think Kelsey had 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and he didn't get the Gronk record though, which I believe was 18.
Right.
He hasn't scored this week. They're playing right now.
Yeah, he's already scored.
He scored.
He did?
Yeah.
I thought I saw it. Okay, my bad. I thought I saw him and yeah, you're right. Okay, my bad. Just kidding.
All right. Other guy getting 1 point, and this was from me, and this was just because of kind of when you got him too. It was Gus Edwards. Kind of came in and was your perfect flex running back 2 when injuries were knocking out running backs everywhere. And you got to come in and get a guy who got you a little over 12 points a game. 0% ownership. Like even the deepest of deepest leagues, this guy was a waiver wire hero for you.
I picked him up super early in Dynasty leagues just because.
I mean, there was one super deep league where I straight up drafted the guy.
Yeah.
But that league is absurd. No one should be playing in a league that deep.
Right.
And he gave you a minimum of 67 rushing yards per game, scored in half of his game. he was a running back 2, running back 3 down the stretch for you that you just got to plug in off your waiver wire and give you some stability in your running back 2 spot, which is basically what you're looking for.
And he fought off the Kenneth Dixon, scare that everyone had for 1 week. And
So, Dixon actually had a good game this week too, though.
Yeah.
Dixon was showing up, but Edwards had the job and was getting the majority of the work.
I'm interested to see what happens with him and what the Ravens will do now moving forward. With this
Gus Edwards
offense.
is a guy in Dynasty, given the mess that the Ravens running backs are, that I am looking to package and sell probably.
Yeah, because I still think they go out and get a guy that they can completely lean on too. And I don't know if Edwards is that guy, but
What do you
No,
think What do you think about Tevin Coleman in purple?
no. I got to see what he did in terms of him, like when he gets more touches, the efficiency starts to dip. A guy who's also had injury issues.
I just think you're adding more to the mess if you go Tevin Coleman there, but I don't know that they necessarily find a quick answer there either. So you
Yeah.
may have another year.
this
with
might
Gus
be Alex
Edwards.
Collins all over again. This is
Exactly my thought.
what
Well,
concerns me more.
I am not buying into it this time. I will avoid the Ravens backfield this year.
Yep, me too.
Yep. I
All
would
right.
like to. I would like to sell that off.
Getting 2 second place votes is Philip Lindsay.
Yeah, I was one of them. He's the running back 12 as of the time of, well, Thursday.
When the fantasy season was over.
Yep.
When these were written. And he was relatively unheard of coming into the season. He was undrafted during draft season for the most part, showed great efficiency before faltering late in the season. He's a flexible player that you could start with confidence, gradually taking the role away from Royce Freeman and really performing up until kind of the last couple weeks. But just the fact that he was a waiver wire hero and he gave you a longer stretch of performance than what some of the other guys that I was in consideration for here did. I felt like that deserved mention because he, for most of the season, was startable.
He was, I think, my 2. He was my 2 here. 13.7 points per game for Miss Hopper said he was the 12th running back on the season before he got hurt and missed. Before he got hurt and during the regular season, he was an RB10. He was a guy that you could set up and just go. He paid off guys who went, heavy receiver or tight end to start and waited on running back to go against the grain, which was not to do that this year. He paid off for that. And just a guy who may have gotten some hype enough to be drafted towards the end of draft season, but a guy that got picked up a lot in week 1 when he flashed and showed up for you almost every week besides the playoffs, unfortunately.
That's why he didn't make my list. He just dudded you in the playoffs.
Yeah. But
Maybe took it a
it's
little
matter of
personally,
getting there.
but
Although the person that you have instead of him is very, very deserving.
all right. Let's go ahead and go to the other person who tied with 4 points at the second spot, which was Tyler Boyd. Dan gave him a 3rd place vote, and I gave him my 1st place overall.
Then you can go ahead and talk about it, Nick.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about him because as much as I think he deserved it, you could make the same argument for him not being there for the playoffs. So
True, but at least in his last game he played, when you knew you had him, he scored a touchdown. He got you 60 yards. So before he destroyed his knee. Undrafted, finishes the wide receiver 15.5 PPR, was picked up after his week 2 performance. After that was an immediate weekly starter, scored 8+ in 9 of 12 games, had 4 games of 18+ where he just straight up tried to win you his week by himself. Awesome performance, complete breakout, and he did it towards the end there with Jeff fucking Driscoll as his quarterback.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah, I'll talk more about him later. So
From weeks 2 through
about Tyler Boyd.
From weeks 2 through 15, he was a wide receiver 1. He was wide receiver 10 on the year, and 8 wide receiver 2 or better finishes on the season. And what doesn't get talked about enough is that he nearly bounces back after any sort of dud week. He was a guy that just showed up, and then yes, maybe he struggled because the Bengals suck, especially after all their injuries occurred.
early
He
in the
bounced
season,
back.
that offense was good.
It was
Just way too much attrition.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a guy that you went out and got him, who you picked up, traded for, whatever, he paid off for you during those weeks, and it was as a guy who owned him a lot, I'm happy.
Yep, and I may have been a little contrarian with not having the same guy as you guys, being my number 1, but I thought Tyler Boyd deserved a lot of credit for what he did.
Hey, we talked about him. That's where it is.
All right, and number 1, getting 2 first place votes and 1 second place vote, mine being the second place, Nick Chubb. I am so happy that he worked out. He was
I
awesome.
am too. Nick Chubb's a guy we loved out of draft season, and he was either undrafted or taken very, very late as a stash because of Carlos Hyde.
And often dropped.
Right. With all the talent in the world, and despite the presence of Duke Johnson, despite Carlos Hyde being there early on, Carlos Hyde getting traded away opened up the door to the starter role, and he's going to put up 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns on right around 200 rushes with receiving numbers that leave some promise for the future. It's a running back 7 after taking over the starting role, and if you want him in your waiver claim, he gave you a plug-and-play running back 2 guy that you really could just set and forget. He didn't take over the starter role until week 7 and put up 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in basically half a season.
Yep. 16.9 points per game during that span. I think it was week 7 when it happened, as Hopper just said. He finished with a touchdown over 100 yards in all but one game since he became the starter.
I will say he actually did not get to 1,000 yards.
Did he not?
Nope, finished at 972. Only got 24 yards today against the Ravens.
Ugh.
It,
Well, I was trying to predict.
Baltimore is a little tough.
Either way, though, you put up 972 in what would have been now 8 games as a starter, so right around half a season. That's really good.
No, it was still very, very good.
Yeah, I think he had one blow up game beforehand.
Yeah,
And it was against
but
Nick.
but he had 3 or less attempts
Yep.
in his first 6 games.
Yep.
And then he came in, had 18-plus touches down the stretch, scored 10-plus in all but one game. Didn't quite give you the playoff blow-up you were looking for or hoping for, but, man, real solid performance, and he finished as the running back 15 after starting half a season.
Mhm.
He is going to be a probably... Who do you take next year, Nick Chubb or Joe Mixon?
I
Oh, man, I don't want to think about that right now.
I probably take Chubb, but a lot of it's going to depend on what the Bengals do with the offensive line and quarterback and coach and a lot of variables there. But it's probably Chubb unless the Bengals fix their shit. I do think Mixon has more receiving floor though.
That's where I lean, is I think Mixon I'll touch him.
But those guys are going to be probably pretty close in drafts next year, right?
No, they're
Yes.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
They'll be the
Yeah,
guys that
absolutely.
we end up talking about being guys that could pay off from their ADP.
Because they'll be mid to late second rounders.
Nixon will be where he was towards the end of draft season, and Chubb will be right beside him. I agree with you there.
All right. And then that does it for the waiver wire heroes. We've got 2 more awards before we get to our beer review. Up next is playoff MVP. Dan, I think you probably put down the honorable mentions. So quick talk about those.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to talk about CMC and Hopkins more, but we need to just throw them out there that Hopkins was wide receiver 1 during that span. CMC probably because we didn't need to put him down here, but he was the RB2 during the playoffs. We didn't need to put him down there because we were going to talk about him anyways, and because they were guys you were relying on to lead you through.
And I think it's more how you perceive the award
That
too.
too.
I think Nick and I and you, because we all have the same 3 people in varying orders, took it as a guy that you wouldn't normally be starting or wouldn't normally be counting on to produce that really made the difference for you in the playoffs, which CMC and Hopkins are guys you're absolutely counting on if you're there.
Yeah.
Yep.
For me, it was who came out of nowhere and won people titles.
Who did we shit on for the entire fucking year?
We'll get to him in a moment.
Yep.
In the second place, we had a tie with 5 points each. Let's start with Robbie Anderson, who had a awesome playoffs, even though he did pretty much nothing up until that point.
It's all about rating for what he's been worth.
He was actually the wide receiver 2, weeks 14 through 16. He finally found some rapport with Sam Darnold. He scored 1 touchdown in each of the fantasy playoff weeks and managed 75 or more yards in all 3 games. He was very, very good through that stretch, despite, like you said, doing nothing up until that point for the most part.
Yeah.
Like he did jack shit until the playoffs, and then he performed.
Yeah,
His stats from week 6 to 13, 185 total yards and no touchdowns.
he was hurt, wasn't he, too?
He was banged up a bit, but he
was
played through
banged
most
up.
of them,
Okay.
and he just did nothing.
And, Darnold was hurt, and then it became we got to see what we have for the future. From weeks, he got better every single week during the playoffs. He's the wide receiver 2 during the championship week, obviously behind Brown, because Brown did Brown things, but he's a guy, 19.7 points per game during that stretch, touchdown in every single game. I mean, he basically paid out. I think he had over 30% target share in all 3 games. So
And we did, I don't think we
was
recommended him in 14, but I think we did in 15 and 16, and he paid
I'm
off.
pretty sure he was one of mine in 15
He's
or 16.
intriguing again next year, especially
It's-
with Darnold.
But how is he going to mess it up in the offseason?
If he can keep his
Actually,
shit
wait,
together.
Never mind, he's a free agent. I looked at this today.
But I don't believe it's a
Is he an
unrestricted.
RFA?
I believe it's either a restricted or what's the other one?
Oh, what Collins was going into this year.
Where they
Let
basically
me
can just
look. Hold on.
throw him a 1-year deal.
Well, I'll throw up sports.
Is it
Track.
exclusive rights free agent?
Yes, that's right. I don't know if that's what he is, but yes, that's what the other one was.
Yeah. Oh God, I just broke everything.
I got it. Just keep talking. That's generally cue to keep talking.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll get the answer. Let's go ahead and talk about Damian Williams then, who also finished with 5 points. I gave him my number one overall. Dan and Hopper gave him the third place vote. The reason I gave him my number one is because no one really started in week 14, but as soon as Ware went out, they were able to plug him in and play him in 2 straight weeks. He exploded for you, combined for 263 total yards and 2 touchdowns over the 2 games. Gave you a minimum of 21 fantasy points over those 2 games. He basically came in and won people titles. Unfortunately, I ran into him and won and lost because of him.
I probably won him because of him too. Robbie Anderson is an RFA next year.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you mentioned, but Williams was RB1 during weeks 15 and 16. He finished as the RB2 in 14 and RB4 in 16.
He was also
Dominant.
less owned than what our number one guy was going into those weeks, so he was more available.
That too.
Yep.
But he managed to give you 2 touchdowns despite poor yardage totals in week 14. He gave you 140 total yards and a touchdown in week 16, and 2 touchdowns and over 100 scrimmage yards in week 15. So he was very, very good, especially, without Spencer Ware.
All right. And then let's go ahead and talk about our number one guy. I gave him a second place vote. You guys both had him as your number one playoff hero, and that was Derrick Henry.
He got you to the championship game, and he did well in the championship game.
Yep. Not as good, but well.
You got there with
Yeah.
Derrick Henry. He deserves to get talked about.
I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure that these 3 weeks were literally half of his production for the season.
Over half.
Yeah, it was an insane explosion from Derrick Henry. 7 touchdowns over that 3-week stretch.
And 500 total yards.
Yeah, 500 total yards. His worst game was 80 yards and a touchdown. So you will absolutely take that.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing that for me kept him from being number one is he was pretty much owned everywhere. And most of his owners didn't make the playoffs, I don't think. So that was the one thing that put him in number 2.
Or they picked him up, and because he was dropped a lot, I think, throughout there, especially after their game in London against the Chargers, where I think he had like 20% of snaps, and he bitched and complained he wanted more.
Yep.
So he paid off the people that actually had him and made the playoffs.
So we've made the Derrick Henry sell call a few times, and we've looked right about it before.
Do it again.
Or just
Do it again.
sell it again? Okay.
Nick,
You have another window.
you mentioned this to me during this happening. He only shows up in December, only. And again,
Yeah.
he'll get talked about as a guy who needs to get more work. He doesn't get involved in the passing game. And then once it gets cold and the Titans, obviously once Mariota's banged up, because it tends to happen during this time of the year, then it's a Derrick Henry show.
Yeah, I read the stat on Twitter. I can't remember who posted it, but someone did. He averages like 1.5 yards more per carry in December.
Yeah.
And in the majority of his fantasy
It's
points.
fine. He's the guy you trade for before the trade deadline. You give up your lowest bench spot.
So
because
he's
that's
the
what
Russell
worth.
Wilson of running backs.
Yeah, sure. Except it takes him to the playoffs for him to start blowing up.
All right. And then before I get to the beer review, we want a quick talk about our overall MVP. We've talked about all these guys already. Starting off in the 4th place for the overall MVP award was Melvin Gordon, got 1 third-place vote from Hopper.
Yep. But I don't really have anything to say. We've made our cases for everybody that's listed here. So
No.
All right.
Rewind about 30 minutes if you want to hear my rant about Melvin Gordon.
Coming in 3rd place, Devontae Adams with 3 points. I gave him a 3rd place, and Dan gave him a 2nd place vote. And just
Very
mostly
deserving.
consistency for you.
It's always been consistency, especially with receivers where it can be tough. Some of them do the boom bust weeks. Again, just like Hopkins, he's a guy that you plug and play to you knew he was going to give you a very good week.
Second place, Patrick Mahomes with 6 points. He got a first place vote from Hopper, a second place vote from me, and a third place vote from Dan.
Well, for me, it's ADP again. Really, you look at everybody else on this list, and you got the best deal on Mahomes. He should have been drafted around where Rodgers was, and wasn't because you didn't know what he was doing. And he came out and just absolutely exploded at the quarterback position. Again, position you can win with a lot of different ways there. It's not typically highly valued in fantasy, but this season from Patrick Mahomes was special.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I gave him a third place is the typical position value in most leagues. Now, super flex, we did more super flex or obviously 2 QB. He'd be number 1 with a bullet. So
yeah, in super flex, obviously he'd be your MVP.
Yeah,
but we base most of our stuff off a half PPR 1 QB.
So
which is why my first place vote, along with Dan's, went to Christian McCaffrey. Hopper gave him a second place vote. And for me, it was just his second half of he was solid the first half of the season, was on pace for a low to maybe low mid running back 1 performance. And then he just exploded and finished his RB2.
Once he found the end zone, it's all he needed.
That was, I think, the other reason I went Mahomes over McCaffrey too, is it was an all-year thing. It is an exceptional. Not that McCaffrey was bad at any point in the year, but for Mahomes, it was an incredibly high level all year.
All right, and before we go ahead and move on to the biggest disappointment award, we got to give you a beer review.
Beer review.
All right, Dan, what did you think of Star Chicken Shotgun by Greenbush Brewing Company?
It's
the biggest thing that stands out is its name, right?
Yeah,
that's what I remember about it.
We've had a lot of IPAs. We've had a lot of different IPAs. This is a traditional. I think it's more of an East Coast IPA. Because it's balanced with the malt,
piney bitter.
Yeah, and I like juice more in mine, and this does. It's a okay IPA. It doesn't stand out enough outside of what Hopper just said with the name and the logo. I love the logo.
Yeah. A little more bitter than the current standards going to. Where even if it's a higher IBU, they cover it with more haze or lactose or other flavors where you don't get kind of the punch as much as this one is. This is more of like. This tastes like an IPA you would have tasted 4 or 5 years ago.
Very traditional East Coast IPA.
Yep. So if you're looking for traditional style, great example of it. I like it. I'm on my second one, but I'm also a fan of traditional IPAs. It doesn't taste a lot like a lot of the ones we've had lately, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's solid. It's very drinkable. But obviously not Dan's preferred favor of IPAs. He prefers more New England style.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Hopper, how is your coconut stout?
No, it's porter.
Porter, sorry.
Not as much coconut as I would like. It's very good. Don't get me wrong. There's a hint of coconut to it. It's a very, very solid porter. The goddamn pigeon porter, just in its truest form before they add anything to it, is a very, very solid porter. A lot of roasty nuttiness all the way through. A hint of coconut on the end. Kind of wish the added coconut flavor was a little bit stronger to differentiate it and set it apart from its, base beer, if you will. But it's still very, very solid as I would expect from this brewery and this particular, again, base that they do. It's really weird to talk about this one because it's literally a variant of something that they brew all the time.
And we've had on the show.
Yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our biggest disappointment now that we've reviewed some beer. So for the biggest disappointment award, person who screwed you the most this year, besides 31st work schedule, starting off with getting 1 vote, third place vote was Doug Baldwin, and that was from me. I was a little surprised you guys didn't include Baldwin because he was super disappointing.
Big note was
I didn't include Baldwin is because the other guys that are on this list went significantly higher.
Yep. His ADP I think dropped with the knee scare. So and we knew there was concerns coming into this year. Granted, I didn't think it'd be as bad as it turned out to be. But at least he showed up in the playoffs a little bit.
But yeah,
he did show up at times. He flashed a little bit, but just the only reason that he wasn't included for me is because the 3 guys I have listed, It's their positional ADP, we'll put it that way, was much higher than what his was.
Yeah, but as I commented here, so much for Dan's favorite Gronk Baldwin stack, right?
God, yeah, Johnson, Johnson, Gronk, and Baldwin. I love that stack going into the year.
And that woo.
But that was also pre-Baldwin injury, but still.
So yeah,
man.
Baldwin finished as the wide receiver 44, went somewhere between the early third to early fourth round, depending on where you ended up when you drafted. He slid kind of as the time went on, but he never slid past early fourth round from what I saw. He was a top 15 wide receiver off the draft boards. Missed your first 3 weeks. Didn't score a touchdown until week 11. His only redemption is he put up 2 amazing weeks in week 15 and 16, but the only way that helped you is if you traded for him right before the trade deadline.
And I will say, if you throw out the first 3 weeks he missed, he was a wide receiver 27, so he at least had flex value.
Yeah, that does help, but
a lot of that was aided by weeks 14 and 15.
Yeah, the weeks where probably wasn't helping you too much, because if you took out the first 3 and the last 2, he was probably closer about wide receiver 35 or 40.
Yeah,
injury riddled season for him. Injury riddled season.
Yeah, I think the knee and then later the groin just affected him throughout.
Yep. All right, we have a two-way tie for third. Starting off, let's start with the quarterback, which Hopper gave a second place vote to, of Tom Brady.
Yep, I am gonna crap on Brady here a little bit. Forever a fantasy quarterback, one basically. Normally a top 3. He faltered big time this year. As a quarterback 13 overall, behind Cousins and just ahead of Mitch Trubisky, who missed multiple games. He's going to end up with his lowest touchdown rate since 2006, his lowest yardage total since 2012, and his highest interception rate since 2011. Brady's a guy you spent a higher draft pick on, and who could have gotten the same level of performance waiting until about round 12 or so.
Or picking up somebody off the waiver wire.
Or picking up somebody off the waiver wire because he was streamer level replacement, basically, which is not what you expect from Tom Brady in a fantasy season.
Yeah, we were always advising to be cautious with him. He'd show up at random times, typically at home. He did okay in the playoffs, if I remember. I think he had an okay week 16.
He was just okay all season. And
Yeah.
that's the problem, is that if you took him to be more than okay all season. You took him to be Tom Brady, but you kind of feared this with the way the last couple seasons have started, but there was never a get right.
He almost put Aaron Rodgers on this list too.
Yeah, he was almost there. He thankfully did a little better.
He's a round ahead of Brady.
But yeah, we all had Brady in our top 5, and that did not work out, unfortunately.
Yep.
All right, and also with the tie there, was David Johnson got 2 third-place votes from you two.
It's going to end in an okay year. He's an RB10 on the season. But as Hopper pointed out throughout the show, it's based on where you drafted him. He was our show's RB1. He's a guy that we really, really, hit it on that he was going to go back to 16 form. I think we completely underestimated how bad this offense was going to drag him down, though, and the coaching staff and everything else.
Yeah,
and that's the problem. It was the offense and, well, as I put it, David Johnson, or more accurately, his offensive line in my notes is what I'm really giving the award to. But he's only going to end the year with about 300 touches, which is lower than the 350 we thought he would get. He's going to be below 100 targets, under 4 yards a carry, and only 10 touchdowns, which is low for him. He only managed 5 games over 100 scrimmage yards. And really, for a guy you took in with a top 4 pick, you don't want to have to think at any point during the season, do I or should I start this guy? But with David Johnson, you had to.
Yeah, it was a situation where, just unfortunately, we were right about the overall usage being there, that he would be a major part of the red zone weapon, that he was going to get a large chunk of the team's touchdowns, but we didn't think that the offense would be so horseshit that they would only run, 550 plays, only have so many red zone opportunities for him to take advantage of, not be able to sustain drives, and everything just kind of crumpled from there.
And Chase Edmonds having 1 game of stealing 2 touchdowns from him.
Yep, that did not help.
He had Johnson had 9 games of under 75 total yards. That's really weird.
And
that are hammer something.
You would just hope he bailed you out with a touchdown.
And he was so up and down with his receiving work, which it really killed people. His bigger weeks, he did have a true RB1 week where he finished as the RB1. I think which is what helped propel him up these rankings a little bit more. But it's disappointing. But he is a guy I'm targeting next year because I think there'll be some sort of Todd Gurley resurgence from him.
838 offensive plays for the Cardinals. Average is up above about
that's
right around 1,000 normally.
I was being facetious with my 550, but yeah, 830 is bad.
I know you
That's
were,
less
but
than
I
the
wanted to see
Bengals
how
last
bad
year.
it actually was, and that's pretty bad.
All right. Moving on to second place with 2 second-place votes from Dan and me. Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah.
We just went Patriots for second place, basically.
Well, it made sense. I mean, the offense kind of disappointed for the entire year. Gronk, especially, a guy that bumped up the boards once Edelman's suspension was put through. There was no receiving option to start the year for them.
And
We were higher
he was
on-
healthy, and everything looked fine.
Yeah, like I would have put Chris Hogan on this list with him, but his hype didn't start until very late into the draft season.
And even still, his ADP was, what, 4th or 5th round?
It moved up. He was more of a guy that people targeted to hope that would break out. Gronk was drafted as he tied in one, was going to be a guy that people expected and assumed he would put up low end wide receiver 1 numbers. We basically thought he would have a Travis Kelce type of year, and it didn't. Even though he was tied at 9 on the year, I think
10 and 10.
10.
He was behind names like David Njoku, Trey Burton, Kyle Rudolph, Austin Hooper, Jared Cook, and Eric Ebron.
And one thing that stuck out, he gave you a goose egg championship weekend.
Gave you a goose egg in the
Oh,
championship.
that's what did it for me. There.
And then between weeks 2 and 11, he didn't score a touchdown or break 100 yards.
Yeah. Now what we expect from Gronk? I think Gronk's in near retirement mode.
He's probably what, your tight end 4 or 5 next year, if he plays.
If he plays.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Yeah, I guess. And he might end up closer to 6 or 7.
Depends what the Patriots offense looks like. If they go and win the Super Bowl this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Brady is ready to and Belichick is ready to try to.
Well, Brady's already said he's coming back.
Oh.
We say this every year.
All right, and let's go ahead and a clean sweep on the biggest disappointment, and that's Le'Veon Bell. And that's because he didn't play a single game. But the reason he's the biggest disappointment isn't because he just held out. It's because there was no word that he was not going to show up for week 1 until 99% of leagues have been drafted. It was a few days before the season started, and it's like, oh, by the way, Le'Veon Bell may not show up week 1.
There's always reports that he was all right. He'll be there. There's always weeks, certain times where certain deadlines would be met, where he needed to make enough money, where he needed to report, where it just made sense. Never happened.
And there would be reports of, hey, he's going to report now, and then he never did. So you had to hold him until that last deadline passed, where he couldn't.
Yep, unless you were crazy and just cut him out of anger, in which case it worked out for you. But man,
He was always drafted. I mean, it wasn't, I think, until the true end of draft season, right before the season started, where he became more of a, I think, a second round or late first. People were still drafted.
I had already drafted in all my leagues when that happened.
Like he didn't
I had
start.
2.
Yeah, like he was a top 4 pick in the majority of drafts, if not top 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think that news came out, and it was the Monday or Tuesday after before the season started, so it was like Labor Day or the day after. We had our last draft that Sunday, and I'm pretty sure it came out the day or the day after that hey, he may not be there week 1, and that's when he slipped out. But even still, he was still a second rounder.
Yeah, I mean it's no brainer.
So yeah, that's what hosed everybody. People were wasting a top 4 pick on him and just got hosed.
Or even a top 2 round pick for somebody that gave you literally nothing.
That you had to burn a bench spot on all year.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Now on to my favorite titled one. The injury suspension midseason heartbreak of the year. Starting off with a single vote. Dan, let's start off with yours, Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, it was all injuries. There was some, I was very high on him. I think I was the highest on him as a show. I predicted that he would see Zeke, type of level of work, and really he only got that for 3 weeks for this entire year, where it looked like he could have, salvaged his season. He played 2 games before the Jaguars bye week. I think that was due to it was a hamstring and ankle problems. Like I said, from weeks 10 through 12, he was the RB. He was RB5, but again, right afterwards, when the team derailed, and now reports of him, like there's so much tension there, it really derailed what could have been a good finish, to the season for him.
I had Fournette plugged in, and then I saw Nick had mentioned a guy that I felt more personally.
Yeah.
All right, and then I gave my third place vote to O.J. Howard, who remember, Hopper, when you were freaking out about the Funchess for O.J. Howard trade, but you were thinking that the Funchess side had gotten screwed, but now I'd assume you probably would have flipped that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before going on IR,
How far we've come.
Yeah.
Before going on IR with his ankle injury, he was actually on pace to tie Jared Cook as the tight end 5, averaging 10.3 points per game, still finishes the tight end 11 even though he missed the last 5 weeks of the season. Basically, it looked like it was his breakout year that was cut short by injury, but he had completely shut Brate out of this role, and he had it to himself.
Well,
Granted, Brate without O.J. Howard didn't really do a whole lot to say, hey, I'm still here, so...
Yeah, he caught a few touchdowns, that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brate looks like, Howard, I should say, looks like the real deal, and he will be in the conversation for probably top 5 or 6 tight ends next year.
I think he'll be a guy where I'll be targeting because I think he'll be of good value. Who's going to give you the upside of what we may see this year?
And it'll be interesting to see how high that hype train gets.
True, very true.
All right, coming in third is Emmanuel Sanders. I gave him a second place vote, and Hopper gave him a third place vote.
Yep, I sure did. He was having a very, very solid season before it ended abruptly. He was on pace to bounce back to his wide receiver or high wide receiver 2, low wide receiver 1 type of seasons of 2015 and 2016. And I think he was the 12, I believe, before he got hurt.
And then he fell down to 20 afterward.
Yeah, to 20. Actually, I have this. 1 second. I can look at this. But either way, he left a giant hole in your lineup as a plug-in play wide receiver 2. Yeah, he was a 12 before he got hurt. So it was a guy you took later that was performing at a wide receiver 1 level, and then he hurt himself.
Yep, and I'd say the biggest kind of heartbreak about it is he's 31. This is a tough injury to come back from. He may be done.
He very well could be.
I think he's done in Denver for sure. I don't know.
For sure in Denver, because Hamilton is the future.
Hamilton, Patrick, or really Hamilton and Sutton, but Patrick at least is
maybe the
Patrick showed a little bit too. So
yeah,
they may have their trio of the future there.
Just need their quarterback.
Coming in second with 4 points is Kareem Hunt. He did them to himself.
Yeah, I don't know that there's really any conversation needed here to explain why Kareem Hunt was a disappointment. You got a guy that's giving you a running back 1 season that's performing exceptionally well, and then his past idiocy catches up to him.
Though I did love how the kind of track of his season went. He was a little slow the first couple of weeks. People were pissed and yelling about how much they were pissed they were drafted him. Then he took off and was doing amazing, and everyone was hyped and stoked, and we were making fun of all the people who were freaking out at the beginning of the year, and then it just came to a crash when the video broke. It was just kind of a entertaining plot line.
Screeching halt. It ran into a brick wall.
Yep.
Yeah, he was RB2 from weeks 4 to 11, right before their bye week, and we saw from him, 11 total touchdowns, scored in 9 of his 11 games.
Jeez.
He was, he's RB4 before the bye week on this season too.
All right, and then the number 1 heartbreak, apple of Hopper's eye, Cooper Kupp. Clean sweep.
He was giving you a super low dud rate, a mid wide receiver 2 season before a knee injury ended his season abruptly. He was on pace for over 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns, and a through-the-roof catch rate, and it just hurt. It hurt to lose him.
He's
a lot of places for me.
Wide receiver 2 in the first 5 weeks before the injury started to mount up for him.
Yep. Only played in 8 games. 2 of those he left hurt in. The one he got actually tore his had the knee injury, and then there was the one before that where he had I forget what the other injury was, but he had a second injury earlier in the year.
He missed a couple of games based on that too.
Yep.
And I included that in the wide receiver 16 stuff. He missed 3 games in that.
Because his average performance in the games he was healthy, where he finished the game, was 5.8 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, he was a wide receiver 1
for the games that he was fully healthy for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very unfortunate that we had to see him go down like that.
And it affected the Rams' offense as a whole.
It did.
It did.
Yeah.
They were not nearly as good when he was gone.
Nope.
Last category we've got, and then we're going to do a probably a round table quickly for the one we forgot to add. Breakout player of the year. My third place vote, I was the only person to vote for him, was Baker Mayfield, so he gets a single point in the fifth place vote for this. I just love the way that he came on, coming in third week of the season. Finishes the QB 16, only played through about 13 and a half games, had 2+ touchdowns in 7 of his final 9, and the offense, once Hugh Jackson was gone, just seemed to be trending in the right direction. He spreads the ball around to what I'd say is a below average group of receivers.
Below average is still being kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, Landry, Njoku, and a bunch of guys.
The only reason I didn't put him on my list because I don't think the breakout's here yet.
That's kind of my thing too, and why I didn't include him is, can you break out if you just showed up? Like, can you step it up to that next level and break out from your floor if this is all we've seen from you?
So the reason he made my list is I think by the time next year's drafts roll around, he will be taken as a top 12 quarterback.
I think you will too.
Yeah. He'll be a very...
It's just weird because when I think breakout, I think a guy like Tyler Boyd that's kind of toiled for a couple of years, or Patrick Mahomes who had a backup role for a year, or someone along those lines that's like, all right, they've had this hype, you've been waiting for it, and then boom, here it is. And Baker just spoiled us. He'll come up in the rookie discussion for sure.
All right, moving on. Tyler Boyd, as previously mentioned, is Hopper's second place breakout. He comes in fourth with 2 points.
Yep, we already talked about him a lot, but I didn't really say my input because I had it here. He came out of obscurity, basically. Everybody had written him off. I was hyping him last year. It was apparently a year early on that.
Yep.
I took a stranglehold on the Bengals wide receiver 2 job, something that is not produced really since Sanu and Jones left. So he filled in reliably for A.J. Green when Green was out. He was a wide receiver 14 before his injury and have a realistic shot, 1,200 plus yards with double-digit touchdowns despite a backup quarterback and then another backup quarterback. Or no, it was only one backup quarterback there.
Yep.
And,
You're thinking of Washington.
Right, and seeing top coverage without A.J. Green. He performed in the wide receiver 1 spot. He performed as a 2. He performed with Green. He performed without Green. And he was a guy that a lot of people had written off, and then he finally put it all together.
Besides his touchdowns, he actually kept pace with Green for the majority of the year. Like, he was my honorable mention. He would have been honorable mention for me.
Yeah, he would have been my 4 probably.
Yeah.
If we went that far
So
down.
I agree. He definitely deserves to be talked about on this list.
All right, let's go on to a guy who's got 3 points, and we got 2 guys who finished in third with 3 points. We got George Kittle first.
Yeah, we talked about him earlier. He's a guy that I was high on coming out of the draft. They came into a little bit of a crowded situation. Vance McDonald there early on last year before the trade. Garrett Selleck there wasn't used a ton, and then boom, he's a top 3 tight end in the same, and you can reasonably mention him in the same breath with the same statistical output as Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Yep, and did it with 3 different starting quarterbacks in an offense missing multiple pieces.
As I said earlier this year, he is the DeAndre Hopkins of tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did it all by himself.
Oh, yeah. With some bad quarterbacks. Well,
All right.
2.
And the other guy coming in third, Dan, you are putting Devontae Adams as a breakout.
He was considered a breakout by a lot of people, breakout candidate coming into this season. Yes, he showed up last year. Yes, 12 touchdowns, I get it. They hadn't done 1,000 yards yet. Where a guy, that was his big talking point about why he wasn't where he was. He was a guy that, yes, is a show we love, especially Hopper, especially Noah Boyd, Nate Hamilton out there, who did an article on him. But he deserves to be on this list because he ended as the wide receiver 1 and a guy who's going to be considered a top 3 wide receiver pick going into next season, if not even higher than that. As to where the consistency was, he joins Hopkins as being one of the 2 truly consistent week in, week out guys. Obviously brought up there too, so he needed to be mentioned in this list. I granted he had a lot of buzz coming into this year, but that breakout truly came this season for me.
Coming in second with 4 points, a first place from Hoffman and a third place from Dan is Patrick Mahomes.
He sat as a backup for a year, and then he came out and put together one of the best statistical quarterback seasons of all time. I forgot to make a sentence there for a second. Dan, you can empathize.
Yep.
Yeah, he's absolutely my breakout of the year. We love the talent out of the draft class. You backed up for a year, and then it went better than I think anybody could have imagined.
Yeah, he deserves to be higher on my list. But again, because we talk one QB, but either way, you can't take away what he's done and what he put together this year. It's incredible for him.
The fact that a quarterback's making some of these lists at all is impressive.
Yeah, that tells you how good he was. And there's really not anybody listed by any of us that I would look at and say, yeah, no chance. Everybody's deserving,
And then,
especially your next guy.
and then number one overall, getting a first place vote from me and a second place vote from Dan is James Conner.
I mean, he was the ultimate handcuff coming into this season. He was the guy that if you took Le'Veon Bell, you had to draft James Conner, especially as the draft season was coming to an end. And he exceeded on all levels, turned himself into an RB1. He still finished the season as the RB7 while missing weeks 14, 15, and 16. Didn't play in the playoffs. He was a wide receiver, I believe, 5 through the actual regular season for the playoffs. 7 RB1 finishes, including 2 weeks as the RB1. Scored in 8 of his 12 games played.
Yep. Better pass catcher than we expected. Bell's gone next year. He is going to be a second round pick next year.
I think he'll be where Cook was, where CMC was. He might reach the levels of where Hunt was too.
So late first through mid second range.
This is an offense that produces now. Depends how much the offense change. If Big Ben decides to do his annual,
He's already said he's coming back, so he is
good.
not doing that
He's
dance
changed
this year.
Thank God. So I expect him to be where he was, and we've seen it. Yet again, it doesn't matter who the backup is.
In Chubb tier.
Yeah.
I
think he might even be higher.
I might take him slightly over those two, but similar.
We'll see what projections say when I go to do final rankings.
That's true too.
All right, and then very quickly before we put a finishing touch on 2018, just what do we think of the rookies? I assume it's going to be Barkley with a clean sweep for first place.
Easily, yeah.
It'd be for me. So my 3-2-1, I think, would be. Oh man, there's 4 guys in consideration for me. I would have. It's probably Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley. If I had to rank it,
And then Lindsey with the
Phillip Lindsay and DJ Moore would get honorable mention.
I would go 3 backs. I go Lindsey, Chubb, and Barkley just because of the positional value.
Yeah, Chubb Barkley is definitely 2-1 for me. The third place probably Mayfield.
Yeah, and I again, he would be my 4. It's again.
Yeah,
Positional
and like
value.
I said, Lindsey, DJ Moore also are guys that really jumped out. Dante Pettis actually is another guy that really jumped out. I didn't notice this, and I didn't do this for the show, but I was doing my own dynasty reviews. Dante Pettis, not including basically his blow up earlier in the season after he was done being hurt, wide receiver 5.
No, I think I would do Pettis over Moore if I'm doing receivers.
Yeah, I looking at that, I got to think that also, just because Pettis, when he played, I think he only gave you like 1 dud game.
No, he was awesome in that second half of the year when he came back.
Yeah, he was the 5 after he got back.
And he should be the number 2 at worst in that offense. Next year he'll get Garoppolo back.
No, I think he's the one.
I think
I think they go out and they get a big body guy to let Pettis isn't built to be a 1.
It's also true. Garoppolo getting hurt is going to put them in play for any of the big names this year.
Because I think they're going to go out and grab one of these bigger outside guys. No, I still think Pettis will be incredible. This entire offense gets better. Kyle Shanahan is great for offenses as a whole for fantasy. So
and Pettis is the type of player that complements a bigger type of wide receiver because he can play the field stretcher and the slot.
Exactly, and I'm excited. A guy that I go out and try to get in Dynasty.
All right, so that is the last award there. So it looks like that goes to Barkley.
Yes, easily.
Who we talked hardly any about in the narrative.
We mentioned him a little bit earlier.
We talked about him earlier though.
But yeah, he finished as a RB3.
He was the RB3.
Yeah,
no,
1 through 16.
Barkley, he lived up to the hype.
Yeah, we knew he was going to be awesome, and he still maybe even exceeded my expectations.
He exceeded my expectations because I expected the Giants were bad, and there were some weeks where it did affect Barkley, but like AP of old, all it takes is 1 run for him.
Yep. Yeah, he was awesome. All right, so that is it. We are done with 2018. The playoffs may be happening. This NFL season may not be done, but we're moving on to 2019, starting with the next episode. We're going to go over, we'll talk some rookie sophomores and some younger players for dynasty values. We'll start talking about coaching changes. We're going to start previewing free agency, team needs, and just start going through and getting you guys all prepped for dynasty content for rookies, making
And
sure
in the background, we will be watching a ton of rookies
we
to get
will,
ready for that.
we'll be
segment.
watching an absurd number of rookies.
And I've already started. That's
I will be getting started here in the next week or so.
You
Yep,
will not be doing what you did last year.
I will be probably on the day off on New Year's Day while I'm dealing with a hangover. I will probably be putting the master list together for us to get going.
I'm looking forward to the master list. When is the deadline to declare? It's like the 15th, right, of January?
I think it's the 15th, but
So that's when we have to have it. That's when we'll finalize it. So if you guys do want the master list of everyone we're going to be watching, DM us at BeerfieldFF. We can share that to you and let you know who we're taking a look at this offseason. Let us know if there's any names you think we're missing.
Please, because those are the ones we want to watch. We want to make sure that we go over every rookie that you have any sort of interest in.
Because the name we didn't watch Philip Lindsay.
I don't think anybody watched
I
Philip
don't know that
Lindsay.
anybody watched Philip Lindsay. We did not watch Philip Lindsay. And as with every year, there's going to be guys that we miss. There's going to be guys that we watch and talk about that end up being nothing. Looking at you, Larry Rose and Akram Wadley. But it happens.
And I also don't think there is any film to watch of Philip Lindsay. And that's where sometimes we don't have the ability to is we can't just, plug every single game on. We don't have the time to do that. So
Yeah, and we have to make do as best we can.
Yep.
But thank you so much for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed the Fuelies for the second annual event, I should say. So thank you so much for tuning in. We are Beerfield FF on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped. If you want to catch the video version, it's Beerfield Fantasy Football. Otherwise, we're on every place you can get a podcast: Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you guys want to take a look. Individually, I'm at Nick Sparts. To my right, very happy his Ravens one is Dan Thury.
Thank fucking God. At 30 BFF.
And from St. Louis, the only one of us who decided to dress up for the event, Christopher Hopper.
Only from the waist up. I'm still wearing sweatpants. And you won't say it, but I will. Very happy my Bears won. Not that they needed to. Would have been happier if the Rams lost also, but they beat the Vikings. That's always bragging rights for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, guys.
Oh, shit. I forgot my Twitter handle. At HotBFF with 2 P's.
And we'll catch you guys next time on Beerfield Fantasy Football. Enjoy the Fuely outro one last time.
See ya.
Beerfield Fuelies.
And we're out.